Hello, I'm Jenny Fitterer, and I'm here with your Pisces season forecast. So, as always, we're going to talk about some of the planetary transits that are going to be happening in this time period, explaining a little bit about what each transit kind of means energetically for you, and then we'll be doing a single card tarot reading for the collective. So, it'll be just a single card reading, giving a little bit of overarching energy. And yeah, we're going to get started. I'm just on the tail end of a cold, so I'm a little like groggy. So, if I'm like a little throaty, bear with me. And of course, when my eyes kind of go to the side over here, that's because my notes are on the side. So that's another thing to know. All right, so we're just going to get right into it. So Pisces season. Pisces season is the final of the zodiacs in the energetic year. So it starts with Aries and the March equinox, and then all the way around Pisces is the 12th sign of the zodiac. And it's the very much the ending of the story. So we do kind of follow these yearly arcs in the energetic year, and Pisces being the last chapter has a lot of the feeling of kind of closing the story, closing the loop in order to prepare for the next loop. So that kind of ending is the new beginning kind of feeling is one of the aspects of Pisces. Kind of some other basics for Pisces is it is a water sign, so that tends to deal more with the realm of emotions and that fluidity there. And Pisces is also a mutable sign, and mutable has the quality of being very fluid as well. It's very changeable. There's a lot of flexibility to a mutable sign. It's not necessarily an initiator. It definitely doesn't necessarily have the same kind of staying power as a fixed sign. It's very good with transitions. It likes change and changing of state. So Pisces is the kind of state changing water sign in the zodiac. So some themes of Pisces is very much, since we're dealing with emotions, Pisces is sort of seen as like the big wide ocean of the water signs. So it's this large sort of feeling of love and empathy that's very, very broad. So Pisces is very much concerned and feels things very strongly. Pisces is a very sensitive sign. All water signs are fairly sensitive emotionally, but Pisces is very, very sensitive to all kind of emotional energies, even with the people they're not necessarily close with. Cancer and Scorpio are maybe more emotionally connected to people that they're close to or to themselves. Pisces is kind of fair game. You get into that energetic field in Pisces season and you're starting to be more sensitive to other things. So that can mean in this season we can have a really great and a greatly heightened sensitivity to other people's emotions that we might not be used to. It's kind of just just like expanding your frequency of awareness. And so if you're prepared for that, that can be really, really excellent. It can be a time like if you felt kind of shut out or haven't really been able to connect emotionally with other people, or kind of struggling with your own empathy, this is a really great kind of amplification. If you're already really sensitive, or if you're not used to feeling other people's emotions, this can be kind of like sensory overload. And it can be very confusing to know what is your emotion and what is somebody else's. So another element of Pisces is this, it kind of has this dissolving of barriers and this dissolving of the sense of the walls that separate us. So when those walls dissolve, it's very easy to feel very related to other things. We sort of feel like it's the kind of one love sign where we're all connected, we're all kind of the same. These kind of walls that separate us are all an illusion. We really are. It is this kind of sense of we are all part of a greater whole. We are all connected, and if we just become aware of that interconnection, these barriers we put up do dissolve, and we have a greater sense of connection with each other. That's really awesome when you're in a state to receive that, but it can be very, very confusing because we can really misinterpret things a lot of the time. So sometimes we can think that we are having really, really intense emotions, but it's actually just somebody else in our energetic field that's experiencing something, and we hold it as our own. Same thing we can project on other people. We can think other people are having an emotional experience, but it isn't. It's us kind of projecting that. So there's kind of strengths and weaknesses to this season that way. So really, really excellent of having that increased empathy, but also really it's helpful to practice a little bit of like energetic hygiene and being kind of aware of where you begin and end and where somebody else begins and ends, because it all just gets a little bit more dissolved this season. So that's some of the basics elements of Pisces. There's also some, I can tell this is probably going to be a long workshop because I haven't even gotten into most of it yet. But that's fine. Bear with me. We're going to have fun with it. So Pisces is also has a very deep spiritual component. It's seen part of that sense of dissolving. Pisces is this watery, dissolving nature. Is it's also dissolving the walls between our visions of what is real. So there's our very practical, tangible reality that we're kind of used to working with, and then there's these other realms, the imaginal realms, the esoteric realms. Depending on your spiritual practice, there can be all kinds of other, the dream world, the things that we imagine that are fantastical, things that people see that others don't. Those other realms, that veil, that kind of wall between, can get a little bit thinned and dissolved, and so you can be a lot easier to connect with those kinds of other worlds. So often our dreams are really, really heightened in this stage. You might be drawn to a little bit more spiritual practice, especially anything that involves that kind of greater connection, or dreams, or trying to kind of do divinatory practices. And that was also part of this feeling of closing out the circle and beginning a new one. Is the sense of dreaming, so of what is possible beyond what is practical. So that's some of the main themes of Pisces, and now we're going to go through the actual planets and the transits that are happening. So the Sun, and of course, a disclaimer, all of these times are Pacific time, so this might, like the date might be slightly different depending on where you are, okay? So the Sun is going to be moving into Pisces on February the 18th. So when the Sun moves into a sign, that's what determines the season, that is Pisces season. And the Sun, being this bright light in the solar system, is really just turning the light on these concepts. So we're shifting from our focus on Aquarius themes into Pisces. So everything that I just said is what's kind of becoming relevant with Sun and Pisces. We just start to notice these things. We identify more with the Pisces sort of feeling. These are kind of what starts to come up more in the collective. So all of that more emotional sensitivity, being a lot more heightened and empathetic in that way, maybe not seeing things as so strict and black and white, and just sort of feeling how everything is actually deeply related and connected to each other, heightened dream space, a tendency to fantasize more. There's also an element of Pisces, which, because it plays in the realm of kind of illusion and dreams and blurring of reality, there's also, and can be an element of escapism, and sometimes over-reliance on substances that maybe enhance that blurred reality. So sometimes Pisces can not want to face reality, and then kind of do kind of self-soothing or denial practices. So this can be a time, if you are struggling with things, or it feels like, oh, reality is really overwhelming, escapism, whether through substance use, daydreaming, sometimes it can be spiritual bypassing and over-reliance on that feeling of one love connected, it'll all work out. That can be really useful philosophy to have, but it can be sometimes used as an escape, to say, I don't want to deal with the uncomfortable feelings right now, especially since I'm a lot more heightened, so I'm going to numb out. I'm going to, and again, numbing out doesn't have to be like drugs or alcohol. It can be social media. It can be any of our self-soothing pleasures that become overindulged. So that's another element that can happen with Sun and Pisces. So as we sort of see, oh, reality has this different quality, that can sometimes be kind of difficult to handle, or we can dive too far into it. So that's Sun and Pisces. All of those elements will be coming up a little bit more on February 18th. And then the next sign we have is Venus is going to be moving into Aries. So Venus has been in Pisces for a little while, and Venus is now crossing that kind of zodiacal line into the new year. So as all of the planets are going to follow that Pisces through Aries line eventually. So Venus is leading the charge. Well, yeah, Venus is leading the charge at the moment into Aries. So Venus being this planet of relationships, love, values, and Aries is this bright fire energy, and so it has this really big spark of enthusiasm. It's the first sign of the zodiac, so it has the spark of new life. It's the new story, the new cycle, super fresh, that kind of spring bud energy. So Venus is going to be bringing our heart space and our relational awareness into a bright new energy. So there might be a feeling of wanting to start a new flame, or really being interested in kindling a new excitement. There's also great impulsivity to Aries. Aries is just like, I see, I want, I do. Not necessarily going through the critical thinking process of, oh, what could the consequences be? How might this affect other people? Aries is the ego, so it's very much involved with the self. not, I mean, healthy Aries is not F you, I don't care about other people. It's just me, my impulses. I have to see the world through my own lens, and I'm the vessel, that I'm the first filter. Before I learn how other people think, I have to learn how I think. So a healthy Aries is really me first, and that's a very important thing to develop. So Venus in Aries might be thinking, actually, I really want to focus on myself. I'm interested in spontaneity and impulsivity. That can also happen with our finances. Venus being also related to our wealth. We might be a bit more impulsive spending because it brings us a little bit of joy and fun. So Venus in Aries is, yeah, impulsive, fiery, can also get angry. Aries has this kind of anger fight quality to it too. So there might be kind of hot flash fights in relationships, especially if you're wanting to initiate something new, but there's still kind of other elements that are holding on. So it's very exciting, also very confusing, because we're having this Aries fire spark while we're also, most of the planets are going to be moving into this Pisces ocean water quality. But yeah, so it's going to feel like Venus is carrying this torch and keeping a bright, kind of fun, impulsive energy while the rest of the planets are finishing their Pisces cycle. So that's February 19th. Venus is in Aries. And then we have Mercury is going to be entering into Pisces March 2nd. So Mercury is the planet of the mind and thought and communication. So that means that we're going to be focused on communicating more of those Pisces elements. So that means we might really want to communicate our feelings. We might be really, really wanting to share in conversations with other people about their feelings, because Pisces has this empathy and really wanting everybody to be seen and taken care of. So our thoughts might be significantly more on the feelings of others and wanting to communicate that. That might also mean that can sometimes if your thoughts and your communication gets overly bogged down in those emotions, you can kind of play into the melodrama sort of feeling of making it all so emotional, and so making sure that that's the time and place, and or that you have consent from somebody you're communicating with, so you're not just coming in and emotionally everything on somebody if they haven't consented to that. So it can be a really, really great time to connect and have people's emotions be seen and shared, as long as it's done in a container where everybody's agreed to that. Again, because it's the realm of thought, and we're in Pisces, which has that element to the dream world and more kind of spiritual pursuits. We're going to be thinking a lot more in line of, shifting from Aquarius, which is very scientific and logical and rational, shifting to Pisces, really not so concerned with that rational thought, and is more interested and aware of things that maybe don't follow a particular scientific paradigm, things that are a little bit more unexplained, things that are a bit more esoteric. So our minds and collectively we might be thinking along those lines a little bit more. If prayer is something that resonates for you, that might be a really great time to amp up a prayer practice, because again, that's that communication. Meditation as well, into that mind space and dissolving into that more kind of spiritual plane, is all something that would be really nice with Mercury going into Pisces. As well, that can sometimes be because Pisces, again, has that kind of escapist quality, that can sometimes look like self-deception, where you're kind of like not being honest with yourself, where you kind of fog things over and you create illusions for yourself. So Mercury in Pisces is maybe sometimes a time where you kind of cheat yourself, and you are kind of want to avoid things and you don't want to think about things, and then that can come out in our speech. So sometimes that, yeah, can look like people being really dicey, or look like people aren't being really honest with you. And that might be them not being honest with you, but likely it actually starts more with being not honest with themselves. So people might say things that look disingenuous, and it's not coming from a place of malignancy. It's more that like, I'm just kind of fogging over because there's things I don't really want to face. It's that escapism. So that's a different way to look at things for yourself and when you engage with other people. So something to be aware of as well. And you don't need to like call people out on it or shame yourself for doing that. Understand the purpose. Escapism and fantasy has a really, really key place in our mental and emotional well-being, especially in our child states and our child growing up. And so some of us maybe have learned a lot of dissociative or fantasy kind of escapist practices from a really young age, and that can sometimes be where we go when we're triggered, when we're really emotional. And so that's not a thing to judge. It's something to understand that that's a coping mechanism that maybe we need to understand and grow with and mature, but that's not something that's going to get better if you stress somebody or stress yourself, you're just going to drive yourself further into that coping mechanism. So yeah, trying to give yourself a little bit of grace if that Mercury Pisces kind of like self-deception kind of comes up a little bit. Understand that, again, all of these seasons will pass, and Mercury's a quick-moving planet. It won't last for too long. Okay, so Mercury, that was March 2nd, Mercury going into Pisces. Next, we have one that I've been thinking about and a lot lately, and that is Saturn. Saturn is entering into Pisces on March the 7th. So most of the transits this season are the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, because they move pretty quickly. So Saturn is our big, it's not one of the super far outlying planets, it's one of the mid planets. Jupiter and Saturn are kind of our middle range in the solar system. So they do have personal impact and also kind of social impact. They're kind of straddling that. Saturn is, so it's been in Aquarius for a while, and now we're moving into Pisces. So Saturn is an interesting planet. Saturn is this planet of structure, framework, rules, discipline, limitation. It is connected with the father archetype for sure. Certainly in patriarchal cultures, and since we've been living in, most of us have been living in patriarchal cultures for quite a long time, Saturn as an element has kind of taken on a lot of cases those patriarchal themes, and so we can feel, or a lot of us have in our psyche, in our collective attention to Saturn, is that feeling of discipline and punishment. So it's that feeling of the stern father figure who's here to keep you in line with a firm hand, and that can often feel like punishment, and you can focus on that through that lens of guilt and shame. That's not actually the true element of Saturn, though. Guilt, atonement, punishment, discipline, in that negative sense, are things that we are hopefully going to be trying to cleanse out of our psyche as we try to heal from dominator patriarchy culture. So, so what we're trying to get is to those original concepts of form, structure, and limitation, which are neutral terms if we don't attach excessive emotional meaning to it. Limitation is the one that sounds a bit more loaded because we think of limitation as being this cap to freedom and freedom being this absolute goal. And since we just spent some time in Aquarius where freedom is a really big theme, and Saturn has been in Aquarius for a while, so we have a lot of concepts that we're going to try to get back into a more healthy original state. Saturn in the body is connected to your bones, your cartilage, and your joints, and that is the structure of your body. All of the rest of our fleshy bits, they are hung on the framework and the scaffolding of our bones. And if we didn't have bones, if we didn't have structure, if we didn't have that framework, we would be, well, jellyfish essentially. We wouldn't have the ability to, there's so many things that structure does for us. It allows us to move and propel ourselves. It gives us form and strength. It gives us integrity. It allows us to weather a lot of forces. So structure is a super critical thing for life, and if it's seen as this unfortunate, it's rules and it's here to like take away your good fun time, that's kind of how we like think of viewing things as like, oh, teenagers are like they're exercising their freedom, and the thing that holds them back is this limitation in the structure and these rules, and that's there to ruin their fun. Generally, when you grow up from a teenage stage, you kind of realize, oh, actually, that structure was there to keep me safe, and or that structure was there to teach me how the world works, and or that structure was there, ideally, not as and again, your relationship and how you grew up might be part of how you view Saturnian things, because if structure and limitation was used again as that punishment, you're going to view it as something else. But its undiluted and healthy form is just that which gives us form, that which guides us into where we want to go. Limitation is how you are able to take action, because if you have ultimate freedom and choice, that's this ultimate potential, but nothing can happen yet. The second you start to initiate and manifest things and make choices, you're limiting things. You're saying, I'm going to go right and not go left. Oh, look, I shut the door on left. In order to go right, if I didn't have that structure and that limitation to say, no, I'm not going here today, I'm going here, you'd be stuck in this freeze of too much choice and too much potential. So Saturn is really connected as well to manifestation, and that requires limitation and form. When you're manifesting something, you're bringing it into form. So Saturn has a lot of these concepts, but it does have this feeling of the free ride's over. This isn't the fun time. This isn't the life super easy and I can do whatever I want sort of time. It really is, if you want to do something that brings you value, if you want to achieve something that might be a little bit difficult, you're going to have to limit yourself, build a structural framework. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve mastery. So it is the kind of like, okay, grow up a little bit, because if we're going to ever achieve anything, we need to limit ourselves. So Saturn often works as a planet as that external limitation. A lot of the time, maybe you have a really strong Saturnian quality and you are able to bring that limitation in for yourself. But for a lot of us, it feels like the door gets shut externally. And that's often really, really helpful. Sometimes you've got, maybe you're like, I'm not sure which college to go to. I've got 3 different colleges, applications. I'm really not sure which one I want. A Saturn experience of limitation would be 2 of them reject you. Perfect. You've got 1 now. Now it's clear what your choice is. If all 3 accepted you, it might be really, really confusing and difficult and hard to move forward. So it looks like, ow, I could be like, oh, they rejected me. That really hurts. Or you could say, thank you. This limitation is here to show me a path I can take now. And that's going to be easier to direct my energy. Sometimes it's Saturn, things can look really uncomfortable. Like it can look like, you break your leg and you're like, that limited me a whole lot. I can't go out. I can't play. I can't dance. I can't do a lot of different things. And then because of that, you're able to sit down and really, really focus on something that you didn't have the discipline to sit down and focus on for a while. Or maybe that limitation then creates greater empathy for you because you're like, I've never been injured before. And it's really hard to navigate the world with a bit disability. And actually, a lot of people live this way. Wow, okay, this limitation on my life has actually forced me to grow in a certain way. It was really uncomfortable, but now I've achieved something different because of it. So that's a lot of Saturn. And Saturn entering into Pisces is one I've really been racking my brain around for a while, mostly because my Saturn, my natal Saturn is in Pisces. So I'm coming into my Saturn returns, which is a really famous astrology time period that a lot of people freak out about, mostly because it's this feeling of limitation coming in, and that people don't always like limitation. But Saturn and Pisces, if you listen to kind of what I said about Pisces, is a lot of this no borders, and we're all kind of one thing, and we're all dissolving, and maybe a bit of escapism and dream-like qualities. That doesn't sound like structure, limitation, form. That sounds like ultimate love, open potential. There's no boundaries or borders. It sounds like not structure. And Saturn's coming in with like structure. We need some form in order to get things done, and we're going to get serious here. So those feel like really disconnected energies. And so I've actually personally been spending a really long time trying to think, Saturn and Pisces, what does this look like? And I've got 2 kind of examples that I was really thinking of, both kind of nerdy, because why not? So Pisces is this water sign, and the sign of the Pisces, and the symbol of it is 2 fish. 2 fish kind of swimming in opposite directions. So, okay, I'm like, fish, perfect. Fish are these creatures in the sea that have to learn how to, creatures in the sea that have to move through water instead of moving through air, obviously have to develop really different structures and abilities to deal with a different environment. And so if you think about creatures in the sea, you think of vertebrates and invertebrates. Okay, there's the ones that have bones, the fish and the whales, and there's the ones that don't, and the jellyfish, the invertebrates, and thinking about how their entire lives are structured really differently depending on how much internal structure they have. So when you think about the creatures that can move and navigate their environment with a lot of agency and power, those are the ones with bones. Those are the ones that have an internal structure, a framework in order for them to propel themselves through an environment. That also does provide limitations. They have a set form. They can't squish their way through a lot of things. They also have vulnerability. What happens if their structure breaks? There's a kind of trade-off there. So we're thinking in some ways of like, okay, when we're in this sea of what could seem like no sort of form or structure, actually relying on our internal structure is a really, really important way to navigate the environments that we're in. So Saturn in Pisces is like, kind of like, yeah, like what is the form? What is the structure we can bring into something? in order to think about it as like scaffolding. Our bones are our scaffolding that we overlay the rest of us on. So it's not a punishment. It's not saying, oh, something's wrong with you and you're bad, we're putting a limitation on you. It's in order for you to become something, we need a framework to build on you. So that's one of my, little aquatic nerdy sort of feelings. And the other one is this, this sort of tying into this idea of Pisces as being the last sign of the zodiac, ending a cycle. So Saturn is also, he moves way slower than he's like 29 or 30 years to go through each sign. So we as humans, we only ever live through a few, like Saturn takes a little while to go through. Sorry, he doesn't take 30 to go through each sign. He takes 30 to go through the entire zodiac. My mistake. So that really means Saturn only goes through his full cycle around the sun 2, maybe 3 times in our lifetime. And so the fact that he's coming through Pisces and he's closing his loop through the zodiac that's a closing of one storyline to start another. So one might say dissolving the old storyline in order to start something new. So my anatomy nerddom brings this back to the bones, because we're thinking of bones and structure, is how our bones are formed. There's these different cells. They work as equal opposites. And there's one type of cell that builds our bones. So it puts our minerals down, it spits it out, and it builds our bones. And then there's another kind of cell that takes the minerals out of our bones and carves them out and takes the minerals out in order to use the minerals somewhere else. So they dissolve the bone and reclaim the minerals in order to build a new structure. So Saturn in Pisces, this planet of structure and form, moving into a sign of dissolving, can look a lot like dissolving old structures, eating up that bone, in order to retain those minerals and build a new structure. And we do that because the old structure isn't that useful anymore. When it looks like in our bones, it's, oh, we're, our bones actually, we're using them in a different way. We're doing stress in a different way. We're exercising in a way one time, and we build our bones into that line of strength. And then if we change our physical routine, we change the things that our body does, it needs strength in a new way. So it takes away the minerals from one spot and puts them somewhere else to say, this now is what we need to help us through what it is that we're doing right now. So it's not punishing the old bones, saying, that was a bad framework. It's nothing like that. It's just saying the old framework's not working for what we're doing anymore. Let's build a new one. And we can't just build new without taking away from the old. We need to recycle this energy. So if you just focused on the dissolving and the destruction part, it would look like I'm weakening, I'm losing my strength, this is all really bad. If you don't tie it to the fact that there's another part of the story, there's a new framework to be built that's going to give us the strength and the structure in order to pursue our new goals. But that period of feeling like loss is really typical for that Saturn experience and typical for the end of any sort of cycle. It's, we lose first and release first before we can get something back. The whole you can't receive with a closed fist. It's not like, okay, I have something. Once you give me another thing, then I'll let go of the other thing, which is what we like. We don't like that period of vulnerability and loss, but you can't, it doesn't go in. You have to let it go, release it in order to have something else come in first. So Saturn into Pisces is this dissolving of old structures in order to make new structures, but also a feeling of a little bit of that disconnect of Pisces wanting to be really loving and open and flowy, and Saturn coming in and saying, well, let's be a little bit serious here. So we might feel as where that planet moves into Pisces, those of us who have our Saturn in Pisces, we're going to feel a little bit bigger, but for everybody else, it is good to be present. So yeah, it's a bit of that jarring thing until you can, recognize the purpose of it and recognize that structure is actually a key to freedom, a key to free movement, even though it starts with a limitation that looks like a capping of freedom. So it is short-term limitation in order for long-term freedom and creation and productivity. So that is Saturn in Pisces, March 7th. 2 more to go. And then we'll do the tarot reading. This one's going to be probably pretty long. I'll try to be quick. Venus entering Taurus. So again, Venus, that planet of relationships, love, values, moving into Taurus. So Taurus is an earth sign. Venus loves Taurus. Venus rules over Taurus. So she's coming into her home sign. She's going to have a lovely, lovely time. Taurus is all about the body, security, and also this feeling of the senses. So very, very sensual, sexual, just engaging in all that the body has to offer. Touch, smell, food, nourishment. That sort of feeling is very, very Taurus. Also very stubborn. Taurus is an earth sign, so also interested in structure and keeping what they have, security. So Venus entering into Taurus is this really beautiful a time of kind of decadence sometimes, can be like just really self-pleasure and pleasuring those that you love, and it being engaged in a physical, earthy way, but can also bring up elements of being quite stubborn, not interested in compromise. So in relationships, that can kind of look like, you know, whereas Venus and Aries might be like, quick fights of anger and impulsivity and spontaneity that can go away. Venus and Taurus is like, I'm digging in my heels and I'm not going to be moved and I'm not going to compromise. So again, that can be really awesome. Again, having a backbone, not compromising for yourself is really, really useful if it's also tied with some self-awareness and some grace and compassion, so you're not just being stubborn for your own sake, or stubborn for stubborn's sake. So that'll be Venus entering into Taurus on March the 16th. Yeah, that'll be that. Then the last transit that we have is Mercury moving into Aries on March the 18th. So again, Mercury, this planet of the mind, thought, communication, and Aries, we already talked about, is fiery, liking to start new things, impulsive, really energetic, and concerned with the ego. So in that case, Mercury, again, this is a great time for new ideas, this seed of new life, because now Mercury's also crossing over that energetic new year and gets that download of new ideas, you know, fresh ideas and energy, and wanting to communicate that. Can also be that hot temper mentally, of just kind of saying what you think and then having to deal with the consequences after. So it's very, very honest. Sometimes that can spark some conflict. Yeah, but very, very creative. Not so great with staying power. So if you have a lot of ideas with Mercury and Aries, great to write them down, because you're probably not going to get to all of them. And you're not going to, like, you know, it's very famous to like start something because you're really excited and then fall off of it a little bit later. So, and that's fine. New ideas, we always get way more than we can work with at any one time. So, but yeah, that'll be that very kind of fresh, you know, planets are starting to move into Aries energy. So Mercury in Aries, March 18th. Okay, so that's the transits. I'll just give you the quick moon dates for this season. So the new moon in Pisces will be February 19th. And then we'll have the full moon in Virgo on March 7th. So you can run with that if you like to engage with moon practices. And now we got to get to the tarot, because we're already at a half hour and I haven't pulled a card yet. So I'm going to just shuffle here until we get a card for the season. I'll just use this time to say that I live... Oh, there's a card. Okay. I live and work and spend most of my time in the Esquimalt and Songhees Nation territory. I have a massive gratitude and love for where I live, and I understand that I, as a settler here, often have a lot of privileges, and am also needing to be part of reconciliation and understanding of the effects that colonization has had on the First Peoples. So I have much gratitude for the land and the place that I live in, and I work in my spiritual practice here with a lot of awareness of that. So then I've got a card. I have a card for us for this season. All right. Okay. We have the King of Coins reversed. So this is the way he looks, the right way up. So we have Salvador Dali himself, and he is sitting on this throne, looking quite lazy, looking half asleep. There's lots of very smudgy colors all over there, kind of like fingerprints. Looks like there's like a bit of like a leopard or a cheetah or something down there. And it's all quite smeary and all of that. And it came out upside down like that. Okay, so we're going to see what the King of Coins has for us this season. Okay. All right, King of Coins. Sense and pleasure. In tarot, the suit of coins represents matter and the physical body, money, and talents. The king of coins is its master. Dali immortalized himself on this card. This choice can be interpreted in two different ways. Perhaps Dali intended to offer himself as a financial investment of sorts, as an authority, and as a special case. Then the viewer looking at the picture will feel how small and insignificant they really are in comparison with this artistic genius. But maybe Dali intended to portray himself as an example for every one of us. Then the viewer would understand that each person is called upon to be his or her own master in terms of wealth and well-being. The many fingerprints on this card are intended to show you that you need to become active yourself in a hands-on approach to creating your own fortune. The ocelot on a leash with a blurred face in the lower left corner warns against predatory instincts, becoming obsessed with material values and sensual pleasures. But at the same time, it challenges you to face fearlessly the animal and the predator in yourself and your fellow human beings. Dali's relaxed, half-sleeping pose, together with the resting bowl above his head, warn against carelessness and complacency. In a positive sense, it encourages you to be at ease and to feel comfortable with yourself. You are your own greatest resource. Your fields and harvest, vineyard and wine. Create a life and work style that fits your personality, your own personal culture. Become the architect, artist, and builder of your life. Practical advice. Reassess your financial situation as well as your talents and your desire for productivity and fulfillment. Take stock and make a survey of what you have accomplished so far and what is still lacking. Care for everything you have planted, in your garden as well as in your life in general. All that is meant to last needs to be reevaluated. Sense and pleasure are the measure of appropriate personal wealth. Okay, so this card is interesting for Pisces season, but also really, really in line with Saturn entering Pisces right now. So, because this king of coins, this king has that kind of mastery structure, that masculine energy, and coins is that earth element structure, money, material things, skills, and all of that very tangible, practical things. So, that has a bit of a Saturnian element because Saturn is concerned with structure and form. And so the king of coins is he's building his realm, he's building his wealth, he's building his mastery. He is the master of what he does. And in order to become a king, or in order to, in this case, obviously, in the monarchical sense, maybe he doesn't have to be born, but in the sense of being a master, it requires discipline, it requires hard work, it requires having gone through periods of limitation in order to facilitate growth, to sit on the throne of all that you've accomplished. So there is that feeling of that authority figure and that Saturn element of authority. But it's so connected to value. It's really saying this element of sense and pleasure, that this king of coins is he's building this mastery and structure, but it's not just amassing wealth for its own sake. It's not feeding into the kind of hustle culture thing of I have to have money because that is my own sense of accomplishment and pride and I have to match up to other people. It's very much the measure of wealth, of appropriate wealth that's well utilized and has value, is really, does it bring you pleasure? Does it bring other people pleasure? Do you actually enjoy it? Is it sitting in a vault, building interest because that's like playing this video game of I've got more and more and more, but I'm not using it, I'm not enjoying it? There's no pleasure gain from that wealth. It's just this game. Or can we actually engage with the things that we have? This idea of your greatest resource, you are your own greatest resource, and it's talking about actual things, fields, harvests, vineyards, wine, things that bring you pleasure, food and delight. Like actual wealth are the things that fulfill our needs for physical survival, our shelter, our food, our water, and our social and soul needs, our delight, our art, our friends, our community, having purpose, having some fun and delight. All of those things are needs as well. And if you have those basic needs for life and those needs for a soul life, you're wealthy. You've got it made. And then you can kind of, sit back and really enjoy the fruits of your labor and not get stuck in that cycle of overproduction to excess for nobody's benefit. And that's kind of part of this being warning against predatory instincts and becoming obsessed with material values and sensual pleasure. So there's certainly pleasure that brings you value, and then there's over decadence that can be harmful, and or it's not actually connected to pleasure anymore. It doesn't bring you that joy or bring anybody else that joy. And then yes, over obsessed with material value of getting into that dopamine hit of just making more, though it's not connected to any need or desire. So that's what we don't want. The King of Coins is always needing to be mindful of being that kind of workaholic, hoarded sort of individual. But honestly, because this is coming up in Pisces season, that really is reminding us that what is going to help us avoid that kind of becoming that king on the hill that's untouchable are those Pisces themes: connection, love, sensitivity to the needs of others, sensitivity to ourselves, really feeling that yes, we are individuals, incarnate as individuals, but that is also part of the illusion because we are all part of an ecosystem, a spiritual and physical ecosystem. So we are connected to each other, and in one sense, we are actually the same being, or just little different ego outcroppings of one energy source. And that way we can expand our King of Coins sense of mastery and wealth, not just for ourselves, but for all, because all is ourself. It is that paradox of taking care of myself involves taking care of others. Others taking care of themselves is what takes care of me. We're all connected in a healthy ecosystem. We can all thrive. And this King of Coins is amassing that wealth and achieving mastery and creating those limitations for a time in order to produce that wealth for everybody. So yeah, I'm going to leave it with that. And yeah, so that's that. If you have any thoughts or additional questions, because this is of course a very collective reading, it's going to be a little bit more broad because this is just the energy that everybody's moving through. It's going to look a little bit different specifically for you. The taroscopes that I have are more individual, so those are the individual readings for your sun sign. Those are up on my YouTube channel as well. So there'll be the one, Pisces season has a lot, it's February into March, so both the February readings and the March readings will be relevant for you. This is a pay what you can season forecast, and because Pisces season is largely, or is starting in February. What I'm going to be doing this month, it's a pay what you can. Normally the donations go to me, but February is Black History Month, and I know that definitely more than 1 month out of the year we ought to be thinking of the contributions and just rich ecosystem, and even to say like the contributions of Black people as if they are going to this Pisces One Love thing. But obviously more than 1 month a year is really important, but this is the month that I'm selecting for the donations from this workshop to go to a particular resource and donation-based place to support Black creators. I admit, I filmed this video so early. It's February 4th while I'm filming this, so I haven't actually selected where the donations are going to go this month, so I can't share it with this video. But the donation link is going to be in the descriptions of this video once I actually select which resource that's going to go to. So bear with me. I don't know while I'm speaking this, but it'll be there. It'll be written there. I promise. So yeah, please donate generously. That's not going to be this month. It's going to be going to support some other creators. And yeah, so that is this month. Please donate generously, and have a wonderful Pisces season, closing out this energetic year. To all my Saturn and Pisces babies, let's go on our Saturn returns. We can do it. And let's build some new bones here. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me. Bye-bye.